Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is in our Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and in this game we take a look at another hilarious and exciting game between Frank Marshall, great American player, and our hero of this series, Paul Saladin Leonhardt. So yeah, this is a game played in 1912 in Bad Pistyan, and again, it features a rather tragic end for Leonhardt, who played very well, got a decisive advantage, and then missed a trick at the end. But it's a really great game, really interesting, and in quite an interesting opening as well. So let's have a little look at it together with Torch. So d4, d5, knight f3, c5. Same opening as we saw in the previous game against Alyekin. And here Marshall just played e3. E6, knight bd2. So just setting up actually what's known as the Zukertort setup, named after the great player. Castles, bishop b2, b6. And I mean, what white is doing here, simply lining up the bishops against the black king, and plenty of possibilities. I mean, d takes c5 can happen. You can play e4, you can play knight e5, which is what happens in the game, and just set up some sort of a Pillsbury formation and then swing the rook over. It's one of those things that the engines don't really, they can see the danger from afar, and they can evaluate that it's not that worrying. But yeah, for human players, yeah, it can all prove a little bit worrying. Actually, I think that Leonhardt plays pretty sensibly. I mean, here Marshall played the move knight e5, so setting up his attacking structure. And Leonhardt has got a choice here. I mean, you can leave the knight on there, and then a human player will follow up with f4, or you can just take it and sort of force white to take with the d pawn on e5, rather than giving him the opportunity to play f4 and take with the f pawn on e5 later. The engines were looking at playing bishop b7, or actually there was one really interesting line that was knight b4 from this was Torch against Stockfish. Often white plays a3 just to stop this move, so Torch exploiting that. Playing bishop b7, a3, and now a6. The idea is the bishop retreats, we move back to c6. And, you're always hoping with black that, the time that you've wasted, you've actually gained some time, or forced white to do something that white wouldn't normally do. But here Stockfish played the move bishop a4, so trying to stop the knight from coming back to c6. And it got quite interesting and sharp. b5, a takes b4, and then just c takes d4, leaving the bishop hanging there and just preparing to take the pawn on b4 with the bishop. So white takes, rook a8, bishop a8, bishop d4, bishop takes b4, and after all that excitement, then we've just got some sort of normal position. Quite interesting, actually. Knight d3, bishop d6, queen a1. The queen, lining up like this, also on the a file as well. Queen c7, rook c1. Black's completely fine here, but white's fine too. Just quite a complicated little position there. But some interesting little tactics. Always amazes me how the engines find these concrete lines in all of these openings somehow. But what Leonhardt did was very sensible. Took and played the move knight e8, keeping the knight close to the king. And after f4 played g6. So actually what Leonhardt is aiming for is to move the knight to g7 and to play f5, really to put up some big barriers. And that's not bad when you're facing a player like Marshall somehow. Interestingly enough, the engines like the move a5 here, with the idea of playing a4 to a3, but also with the idea of playing bishop a6 just to swap off the light squared bishops there. Also a very sensible idea. But after g6, Marshall played rook f3. There's many possibilities here. White can also just play a move like e4, for example, but rook f3 is a very natural human way of playing. Knight g7 from Leonhardt. The engines want f5 as quickly as possible here, but Leonhardt does it a move later, and it's not so bad here. He plays f5 now. And here Marshall has to decide what he wants to do here. Yeah, I mean, e takes f6 is the most natural, really. I mean, you're opening up some lines, and the bishop is at least attacking here together with the rook. However, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you do have to swap off the dark squared bishops there, which removes some of your attacking play. And actually, black's got something kind of specific here. That after knight f3, which looks great, you're coming into e5, you can play this move e5, attacking the rook on h3. So white has to play f takes e5 in order to keep the momentum going. I mean, you need to attack the rook. But then you go rook f7, and you can no longer occupy e5 with a knight. And after rook g3, black plays knight f5. The Engines thought that white had nothing better than this, and black's doing quite all right here. I mean, the bishop will come to e4. You'll eventually manage to win back this e5 pawn, and with a pretty decent position. But okay, I mean, it's quite complicated stuff. I think definitely worth trying with white. I mean, what Marshall did was play queen e2, but now, there's this very solid wall on the king side. I mean, it's going to be quite hard to break through. And, well, I mean, black's got possibilities to expand on the queen side, start getting some play going there. And for white, it's going to be pretty tough to break through. So yeah, queen e2 probably. I understand why Marshall did it there. It's a very natural move, but yeah, probably not the best. After a6, yeah, the Engines want a4. They really want to stop black from being able to expand on the queen side like that. Marshall played c4. Now bishop b7. Yeah, double-edged move somehow. I mean, you c4. I mean, you're going to try and open up the center, try and weaken some stuff. But yeah, you're also going to be activating, the black pieces, and yeah, in general they stand quite well. I mean, the Engines want a4 again, just to clamp down on b5. Marshall played rook d1, and now actually the Engines want b5, just exploiting the fact that after here, you're attacking a2, so you're not losing this pawn on b5. And what they're looking for actually was the move c takes d5. And now e takes d5 is possible as in the game, or even queen takes d5. And then, after bishop c2, just drop the queen back to c6, and then play the rook to d8. And, black's looking pretty good, really. And, I mean, the white pieces kind of look impressive, but then you look at them and you say, oh, this bishop's, blocked by a pawn on e5, and the bishop on c2 is blocked by a pawn on f5. So, yeah, actually, the attacking chances are not really there. And, where is this knight going? It can maybe go f3 to g5 and then gets exchanged. So it's really tough for white to make something of this. So Leonhardt played the move queen d7, and here Marshall spotted an opportunity and went for it. Not a good opportunity in actual fact, but again, this is very hard to calculate accurately, and sometimes you've just got to say, okay, we'll go for it. e4 was the move. With the idea really that after a move like f takes e4, which is what happened, we play knight takes e4, and if d takes e4, then bishop c4 check, and a discovered attack on the queen. That's the basis of Marshall's idea. And it's not bad at all. And, the idea is that you're going to break open the center a little bit. With c takes d5, e takes d5. This one has become possible, opening up the line of the bishop. So I'm sure, Marshall, a really good attacking player, was thinking about all this. I mean, the Engines actually prefer knight c4 here, and then a sacrifice with knight d6. Just open up the long diagonal here. It's not better for white, but at least there's that dark squared bishop unopposed that's cutting across the black king like this. Definitely gives some chances here. You've got ideas like playing rook h6 and then trying to bring the queen in behind, for example. So that's what the Engines wanted, but Marshall played e4. But there's a big problem, actually, that the f4 pawn is rather weak. And, well, knight e6 is what the Engines wanted, pinpointing that straight away. And what's the idea of knight e6? Well, actually, we're attacking f4, and we're also blocking this long diagonal. So there's not going to be bishop c4 with check anymore. Yeah, this could actually prove to be rather painful. Knight e6 straight away was the most accurate. After fe4, knight e4, Paul Saladin played knight e6 here. And, well, I mean, if you just protect this pawn with something like g3, we play d takes e4, and you've no longer got bishop c4 with check. So, yeah, Black's just winning a piece here, basically. But Marshall had plans. Now there's ideas here. Because you've taken on e4 just a little bit early, f5 is actually possible. You can actually try and do this. Knight f4 is very complicated, but not the best. The best idea is to go rook f5, and then after knight f6 check, takes bishop f5, we go bishop g7, and you're just claiming with black that yeah, okay, you're the exchange down, but for a pawn and a nice sort of center here. The big problem for white is that you can't move the bishop back here, so you've got to, because you'll allow knight f4. You try bishop g4, but then we play h5, and white's got to give up the two bishops there. So black's got two bishops, a central pawn, and a weak pawn on e5 to attack. The engines thought that was just good compensation for the exchange. But Marshall had an incredible idea in mind: Queen g4. And the idea is that d takes c4. We've got bishop c4. We're attacking e6, lining up now, so that's good. If you go, well, you can't go knight f4, of course, because I've got queen takes d7. But there's rook f4. That just looks clear, right? Attacking the queen on g4. We're also attacking e4. I mean, you're just breaking the attack completely, right? Well, in actual fact, there was an absolutely stunning idea here, just for white, and this is what Marshall came up with. He came up with the idea rook h7, which, to be honest, I would have fallen off my chair if I'd been facing this. Rook takes h7. Of course, the idea is if takes here, you want to do something like knight f6 check and then play queen takes g6 follow up. So really nice. But the idea is after rook takes g4, we go knight f6 check. Well, if you go king f8, I've got knight d7 check. Just winning, of course. So you play bishop f6, and I go rook takes d7. And, you know, this kind of looks like it's going to be very good for white because you're a piece down, okay, but you're attacking the bishop on b7, and you're also threatening e takes f6. But, yeah, black has just got the move bishop c8, this little retreat. You're attacking the rook, and you're also defending the knight on e6. So if you go back to d6, you're not attacking anything, the knight's defended, so you can just play a move like bishop e7, for example. And after bishop c8, there's absolutely nothing that white can do. There's no good thing that you can do. Despite all these loose pieces, despite the rook being on g4, there's nothing you can actually do to win any significant material back. So rook takes d5 was played by Marshall, and well, basically white's got one pawn for the piece, and yeah, a few things hanging still and loose and all of that. But basically, black is completely winning here. So yeah, Leonhardt, great chance to get a famous victory here. But yeah, it's still complicated, and Marshall is tricky. Yeah, the engines were looking at playing the move knight f4, so keeping up the chaos. But bishop e7 from Leonhardt is very, very sensible. But h3 played now by Marshall, and then yeah, another interesting idea: bishop b7 from the engines. And the idea is obviously if takes, you're going to take the rook on d5. Obviously, if you go rook d7, we've got ideas like rook takes g2 check. And if bishop c4, interestingly enough, the idea was just to take and go king f7. So actually, the engine's just looking to give material back. That's just the two bishops for rook and pawn. And the engines just think that this is just long-term pretty good. You're going bishop c6, b5. And yeah, you're just... yeah, they think this is you know, just a winning advantage for black, basically. That's a really tough call to make. I don't think I could ever do that. Yeah, it just feels like you've sort of made a mistake and given back material somehow. Leonhardt played a very natural move, rook h4. Bishop g6 played. I mean, white gets a pawn back, but okay, you get some time to do something. So knight d4 is quite tempting and quite sensible. The idea, of course, is takes, and rook takes. We've just got bishop c5. So that's quite that does feel very natural, and then you're going to have moves like bishop e6 or whatever to just to develop, and you're fine, right? And you're blocking some bishops which are pointing towards the king. Saladin played knight f4 though, and that's a very natural move, forking the bishop on g6 and the rook on d5. What could be wrong with that? Well, Marshall upped the ante with rook d8 check here. Takes, king g7. And now what are you going to do? There are a couple of possibilities here. Marshall played the move bishop f5, which is pinning the bishop to the rook on a8. There was also already the move e6 check. King g6, and now let's throw in a little rook check, king f5, and then e7. And it suddenly looks quite difficult for black to stop e7 to e8. I mean, you can go bishop d7, but then I'm taking off and I'm still threatening e8 queen afterwards. But black plays knight e2 check, king h2, and then rook e4, covering in this way. We go rook f8 check. I go king somewhere, g5, g6, for example. e8 queen, takes, and then knight d4 in this position. And we'll go king f7. We'll end up getting our pieces there. And the engines were making wins, but it's already getting you could imagine it's not particularly easy for a human player. I mean this. We're going to attack these pawns. It's going to be tough to keep all your pieces and pawns together. But the engines thought that this was, a clear win for black in the end. E6 was possible, but Marshall played the move bishop f5. So Leonhardt took on f5, rook a8, and now it's just really important. But again, if you're short of time, this is quite a little bit scary. I mean, you're threatening rook takes a6 for a start. There's even stuff like g3 to worry you, of course. And Saladin here made a total blunder. He was worried about the pawn on a6 going. The engines say don't bother, just play bishop e6, rook a6, and then this move knight d5, which is very nice, defending the pawn on b6, and then we're just going to get the rook in. This bishop doesn't have much scope. Everything's safe. Your king can have some good squares. This is definitely the way to play it. Unfortunately, Leonhardt, presumably short of time, played the move bishop d3 and allowed the rather tragic e6 check. It's just not possible now to stop anything because, this pawn on e6, the bishop covers f6, the pawn covers f7, and the rook supporting the march of the e-pawn to e8. So he played king h6, e7 happened, and Saladin resigned because, you're just going to play the move e8 queen, and that's just going to pick up material. I mean, actually, having put the king on h6 as well, you've got stuff like rook h8 check even to pick up the rook, for example, as well. I mean, if you went bishop b5, you could even consider going rook h8 check and then something like bishop f6, for example. Not quite sure whether that's working, but yeah, I mean, it's all pretty horrible for black. So Saladin resigned there, and drama there. Instead of just a clear advantage with bishop e6 and knight d5, keeping it nice and tight at the back, keeping everything protected. A terrible blunder with bishop d3 and e6 check. And that tricky Marshall got away with it again. But that was an absolutely stunning game. I mean, I thought the opening struggle was quite interesting. I thought that Leonhardt played a very interesting, a very good plan, really, for playing the knight to g7, taking the knight on e5 and just playing f5 solidly. And then Marshall just, again, these are difficult decisions to make during a game. Is this going to turn out to be good or not? Sometimes you don't really know. You've just got to try it. And obviously Marshall, saw some very interesting ideas there, but it was just a little bit too much. It was great, but it was way too much. And slightly unlucky in a way that after bishop c8, nothing's working. But okay, as always, in these positions, you've got to finish it off with the better player. And Leonhardt just didn't quite manage to do it. This was probably a little bit going over the top already in terms of riskiness, wasn't quite necessary. And here he really needed to find the good move, which was bishop e6. And when he tried to keep hold of everything, keep hold of the a6 pawn, e6 check, the e pawn was unstoppable. But there we are. I hope you enjoyed that game. Not very well known, I think, but yeah, just like most of Leonhardt's games, just a total mess, and thrills and spills all the way. So there we are. If you enjoying this series, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends that I've started recording again, and take a look at my new book, Reengineering the Chess Classics. If you enjoy the chess classics, then that book is definitely for you. And otherwise, thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you at the next videos. Thanks for watching.